It's Mark and Pete.
Hello and welcome to the show. More colourful conversations with Mark and Pete. This is the show dedicated to religion, politics and business. On today's show, we ask the question, has the world gone mad? When we look around society, we keep seeing more and more atrocities. It'll be obvious when you switch on the television, look at the newspapers, or perhaps if you're listening to the radio, that yet another bombing has occurred. Perhaps another war somewhere in another part of the world somewhere, and yet more and more people have died. Well, is it just simply that there is more angst with politicians who just cannot agree? What is the basis for this complete chaos? Well, with me today is somebody who I think is sane, and that is clergyman Pete. So, Pete, has the world gone mad?
Well, it's an interesting question to ask, Business and Mark, whether the world has gone mad, because I think that depends on your point of view. Usually, if you're asking that question, the assumption is that the person asking the question, and usually through a form of social contract, the person who's being asked are the sane ones, and the other people out there are the ones who are crazy or mad. But what if it's the other way round? And so what I see is there is a disconnect between different parts of the world. That's what I would say is what I might loosely call the Western world, sometimes called liberal democracies, however you describe it. We would recognise it as being geographically places like Britain, America, Australia, places like that, and Europe. What would it mean to say that the world had gone mad? Well, it would mean to say that the world out there, the rest of the world, is behaving in a way that we simply don't understand. They're doing things that are harmful and unpleasant, and we can't see the motivation. But maybe the people who are mad are the Western world. Maybe it's us.
Well, now that's a very important point, because when you look at those sound bites that ring out throughout the media, it does appear as though perhaps that some of the terrorist issues and some of the real issues, the main problems and the cause of all these problems are actually more in the East. But perhaps you're right. Maybe that is it's just a distortion of the way that things are actually unfolding in the media. Now, I've got a little poem here which might answer a few questions. And this is really about people's beliefs. This is a poem called Hell's Bells. Bang the gong, the world's gone wrong. Through vice, greed and lust, we're overdrawn, all debtors mourn, the nation's gone bust. Knock the door, we're becoming poor, our cupboards and pockets are bare. Politicians are bumbling, society's crumbling, we're living a real nightmare. Sound the alarm, Earth has come to harm, Mother Nature is starting to scream. The climate has changed, scientists are deranged, sin is flowing in our bloodstream. Ring the bell, we're all in hell, condemned to a life that's grim. Our backs are broken, evil has spoken, it's time to go out on a limb. Let's make more noise, throw away our toys, and start a new spiritual revolution. Cry heavens above, we need more love. God, we now need absolution.
Yes.
So if you look at all the problems in the world, from environmental issues, that's reportedly something that we've been talking about quite a lot. Yes, I mean, whether that's true or not, has the world gone mad just simply by allowing the planet to decay? Or actually, is that not really the case? And then when you look at other things that, when we see things like, for example, our economies at a total disarray? I mean, it seems like more and more that we look deeper into the facts, nations are getting deeper in debt. I mean, if you look at America, that's certainly the case over the last 8 years, and so too the same with Britain. So when we look at has the world gone mad, it's not just simply the fact that we've seen suicide bombers going into places like Belgium and France and many other places. It's also on another level as well. Are we actually managing our society perhaps in an inappropriate way than perhaps we did in previous centuries?
And I think that the issue is that if we took a hard look at ourselves, I mean, let's still keep still keeping the division between what we might call the Western world and the Middle East and Eastern world. We see a difference in the way that countries are run. Now, some Eastern countries, for example, Japan, have taken on the capitalist worldview, and China, to a certain extent, has done that. But we can still see a distinction between the bulk of the Eastern and Middle Eastern world and the Western world. And what we see is a violent culture in the East and the Middle East, but we also see a strongly faithful culture, as in faithful to their God, however that God is defined, but also faithful to your family. And we see a drop in that in the Western world. We see a drop in morality, particularly sexual morality. The distorted view that sexual disorientation, for example, homosexuality, transgender, these sort of things, are to be accepted and not held up to any sort of scrutiny, whereas in the Eastern world, and certainly in the Islamic world, this would be seen as examples of behaviours that are immoral. And so what you see, I mean, that's just an example, obviously, but it's part of a deeper issue, and that is the West sees itself as superior because it's so accepting of things which are seen as being immoral from those outside. And then we have people, the Western world, saying, "Oh, well, you lot are violent," and the people outside say, "Yes, we're violent because you are so oppressive and insist on imposing your culture on us. It's hegemony, using your power in a belligerent manner to get what you want out of the rest of the world." And when you take a second look, you say, "Hang on, is there something in their criticism? You know, yes, we're how well are we managing our own affairs? Yes, there's the financial collapse, that was back in 2007, 2008, and looks like it's going to happen again. There's the collapse of the family. There is drug taking getting out of control. There is violence, gang violence, and mass murders aren't simply down to terrorists. In fact, far more from people within the West. So when you take a second look, you start to think, hang on, who is mad? Who is losing control? Is it in fact us who are slipping into madness as a whole culture? And we need to have a wake-up call.
Well, I mean, indeed, and then again, it's this idea of who is mad. I mean, is it fair that a madman who is calling somebody else mad, who's speaking from the straitjacket, should they be the one that should be pointing the finger? Well, of course, they can't point the finger, of course, because they're tied up. But what is the real reason for this foundation of perceiving that the world is now almost out of control?
Yeah.
Is it just simply now that, say, for example, that people, whichever faith that you follow, have lost the foundation of their faith, so they're retreated. They've almost abandoned the principles of their faith, and effectively they've succumbed to some of the whims of the 21st century, with greed, materialism.
Yes.
I mean, let's take just one example. What does the Bible say about this? About where you should adhere to your faith and go to the principles of what you should be believing in?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the point is really strong here, that the Western world was based upon Christian values, although, of course, by far not everyone in the West was a Christian. The way that the laws were worked out were based on Christian values or Christian ethics. And yet now the Western world, for various different reasons, which we could try and trace the different forces that have caused this. But what we can say is that there is quite a large abandonment of faith and of abandonment of anything to do with the Christian faith, so of those Christian ethics and values. And in Romans 1, verse 28, it says this: because they did not think it worthwhile to acknowledge God, God delivered them over to a worthless mind to do what is morally wrong. And he goes on to say, they are filled with all unrighteousness, evil, greed, wickedness. They are full of envy, murder, quarrels, deceit, and malice. And that's not just the Republican Party.
Yes.
Gentle listener, I could gentle listener, I could equally have said the Democratic Party, but I had to make a choice of who to insult. We see all
there
those
are
things.
Humans in other parts of the world
Yes,
as well,
yes, other humans are available. We see all this happening. We see it happening. Abandonment of God, not even acknowledging that he has something to say to the issues, results in God handing them over to a worthless mind. In other words, we become weak because we don't trust in God. Now, people out in the East, Muslims, but you could also say people of other religions, you could say Buddhists, Sikhs, they taking their faith, it seems, more seriously than we do. And now they may have it wrong about religion, about the supernatural being, about God. They've got it wrong, but at least they're believing in something. And
yes.
It's this way. The famous Christian writer, famous Roman Catholic writer, G.K. Chesterton, has a quote that is often quoted at this point in a discussion like this. He actually said it in different ways, but he says something along the lines of, "A man who won't believe in God will believe in anything." Or he put it another way, when a man stops believing in God, he doesn't then believe in nothing, he believes anything. Abandonment in believing in God means that you become credulous, means that you're taken in, means that you become weak. We should in the West be strong and standing up for moral values. Instead, what we've done is we've become weak, self-hating, vacillating. We can't understand what the rest of the world is saying. We can't understand that we can't just keep being selfish and get away with it. Our monetary system is running away with us. Our financial system is in meltdown. We can't see that without standing up for moral values, that other people aren't going to hate us. They hate us because of the way we treat our wives and our daughters, the sexually immoral way with pornography and promiscuity being rife. We can't see that we are looked down upon as being a hideous parody of how families should live. We can't see that because we're mad. We've gone mad.
Yes. Well, I mean, certainly if you look at the evidence of what we've seen just in, the few years of this 21st century, it's unfortunately a sad indictment on mankind, the way that we seem to be treating people. We've talked in other shows about the issues of migration in Europe and the good and the bad of what's happened there. The humanitarian acts by some nations and perhaps not others. And of course, this has caused more angst, and mixed up in all of this, of course, has been some conflicts and atrocities. And that's what often fuels the public's mind in terms of, maybe, governments have lost control. And so effectively this idea that the world is going mad and more mad, they're seeing it on their doorstep. And so, these conflicts now are happening all over the world. I guess the question is that what do we do about it? What is the next step? How do we actually stop this? Because governments have had their go. We keep voting in governments after governments. Business, businesses, interestingly enough, go about their business and aren't completely immune to this. We've seen threats of governments putting embargoes on nations trading. We've seen Russia do that for various reasons. And we've seen other nations put embargoes on people in the Middle East. I'm not so sure that that's actually the right thing to do. I mean, at the end of the day, decent, hardworking people are trying to earn a living. And getting back to those basic principles, the values, from our point of view, I guess that we would say that would be good Christian values. But that could still be the same for good Islamic values. The point being is that we seem to have lost our moral compass somewhere along the way. And is that simply because the prize for money or materials is just too great, and now maybe things have to change? So I guess the question really is for our listeners. So, listeners, what do you think about this? I mean, do you think the world's gone mad, or do you think that actually it's the same as any other century, or perhaps we've always been living in a very, very mad world? Why not drop us a line at markandpete.com, or you could Twitter us at markandpete, or just email us at contact@markandpete.com. So we'd love to hear from you. So join us again next time for more colourful conversations with Mark and Pete.